we leave this rally this summer, we will be traveling to these districts around our state. We hope you join us. We hope you stand with us because there's more of us than them. There's more of us than them. Those of us who are fighting against these starvation wages, those of us who are fighting for human dignity, those fighting for a new South. You know, segregationists had a saying that the South will rise again. I say, let's rewrite that. The South will rise anew. The South will rise anew. We are rising as a new South, as a new Tennessee, as a new Nashville, as a new Memphis, as a new Knoxville, as a new 10 Mile, Tennessee. Wherever from Chattanooga, we are rising together to build a new South, and that is the South that is worth fighting for. It's the South that will redeem this state. It's the South that will redeem this state. We're going to lift up our people. Because yes, Tennessee is the birthplace of the Klan, but it's also the birthplace of the national student movement. It's also the same Tennessee where Highlander Folk Center was, where civil rights leaders across the nation would come. It's also the Tennessee that desegregated Clinton. It's also the Tennessee where the people saw the buses burn. They said, we'll continue the freedom rides. We are that same Tennessee. We come from a legacy of liberation. We are a people of progress. We must reclaim the narrative. We must reclaim our state and live together to make sure our people can rise. So my friends, I'll just leave you with this. Is that we are fed up. And when you're fed up, it's time to rise up. And when you want to rise up, it's time to raise up the wages. Let's go forward together, my friends. Let's build this movement. Let's stand together. And let's put those on notice at the state legislature that your time is up. That you are in the find out portion of our movement. That you messed around with working class people, and now it's time to find out what happens next. That you messed around with the workers. Now it's time to find out what's coming next. That you messed around with our communities, and it's time to find out what comes next because we're standing together. And so thank you all for being here. We're going to keep rising together and working together, and it's going to take all of us, not one of us. It's going to take us standing together across issues. Black, brown, and poor white people standing together to let them know that this politics of fear and division that they try and sow by banning books and banning history is not going to work because we know what it's about. It's about divide and conquer, and we're done with that foolishness. Power to the people. Power to the people.
He is talking. Now put your hands together for Bishop William J. Barber II, founding director of the Center for Public Theology and Public Policy at the Yale Divinity School.
Well, it looks like the South has risen. But I don't know if this microphone has. You are witnessing a third reconstruction. It's good. You're witnessing the third reconstruction right now. And the reason why there's so much resistance is because they used to say in South Africa, only a dying mule kicks the hardest. When Senator Sanders called and asked me would I join him on a nation tour, starting in the South, the answer was a quick yes. He said, Pastor, I need you to do some teaching about why this is a moral issue. And I want to start tonight from two texts from the Bible. In the Old Testament, the prophet Jeremiah said, "Woe unto him or her who builds their palace by unrighteousness, his upper rooms by injustice, making his own people work for nothing, and not paying them for their labor." Isaiah 10 says, "Woe unto those who legislate evil and rob the poor of their rights and make women and children their prey." Jesus in his first sermon said, "You must preach good news to the poor." And the word poor in Greek is patokos. It means those who've been made poor by economic exploitation. And then later in the epistles, it simply says, "The laborer is worthy of their hire." Would you say that? The laborer is worthy of their hire, of their money. In every age, moral people have had to rise up and decide to make the moral case that things have to change and injustice has to move. Our national constitution, flawed as it may be from the beginning, but it does say that we must establish justice. It says nothing about poverty wages. And poverty wages are not establishing justice. Poverty wages establish injustice. Our Declaration of Independence says that when there has been a long train of abuses, it is the very duty of the people, their right, to overthrow that government and provide a new government. I come to tell you that low wages and refusal to pay people a living wage is a form of political abuse.
Yeah, it is.
Our federal government has not raised the minimum wage in 14 years. During the pandemic, we called low-wage workers essential, but refused to pay them a living wage, refused to get them paid sick leave, refused to give them health care. We treated them like they were expendable. We said, yes, you're essential, but then we treated them like they're expendable while corporate profits rose. And CEO pays continue to rise, and Congress over these years have given themselves a raise. The Constitution of this state, you ought to read it sometime. I'm convinced many of the people in your state house, they haven't. The Constitution of this state makes it clear that our liberty depends on people who decide things have to change and injustice has to move. It says in Article 1, Section 2, that the government being instituted for the common benefit, the doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd. What that means, if folk are using government to step on you and you don't fight back, then you are sillier than they are. So in every age, there comes a time when people have to rise and decide things have to change and injustice has to move. In 1935, amidst the Great Depression and labor strikes and the Harlem riots, Langston Hughes turned his pen into a moral instrument and a weapon to fight injustice, and he wrote these words: "Oh, let America be America again, the land that has never been yet and yet must be, the land where every man is free, the land that is mine, the poor man, the Indians, the Negro, me, who made America, whose sweat and blood, whose faith and pain, whose hand at the foundry, and whose plow at the reins." Oh yes, I say it plain, America has never been America to me, but I swear this oath that America will be. Langston Hughes knew what we must know now, that in every age, a moral people have to rise up and decide to make the moral case that things have to change. Say, have to change. And injustice has to move. In the face of unchecked greed and inequality in the Gilded Age, Mother Jones, who traveled Tennessee and Kentucky and West Virginia, she was asked about why she fought so hard for union rights and for wages. And she said, "You mourn the dead, but you fight like hell for the living." when Frances Perkins was labor secretary under FDR. She pushed him until Franklin Delano Roosevelt said at a fireside chat, "No business which depends for its existence on paying less than a living wage to its workers has any right in this, could even continue in this country." Did you know that at the March on Washington, they were fighting for a $2 minimum wage, which indexed by inflation would be 15 to 17 today? Did you know that the night before Dr. King was shot, standing up for wages, standing up for garbage workers and sanitation workers, he said these words, "Nothing would be more tragic than for us to turn back now." And then he said, "Look, I'm a preacher. It's all right to talk about long white robes over yonder and all of this symbolism, but ultimately people want some suits and dresses and shoes down here. It's all right to talk about streets flowing with honey and milk over there, but God wants to do something about the slums and the poverty communities right down here." So whether through the testimony of Scripture, our Constitution, or the witness of justice servant leaders down through history, I've come to make it clear that minimum living wages aren't a far-left idea. A living wage is a fundamental moral issue. It's not about left versus right, conservative versus liberal, and moderate. Is simply about right versus wrong. Now there are a lot of lies out there. And we have to challenge the lies that are used to block living wages. The Nobel Peace Prize in Economics a couple of years ago went to 3 economists who demonstrated with empirical data. Somebody say empirical data. Because you don't want to be loud and wrong. Empirical data. And they found out that raising the minimum wage to a living wage doesn't cost jobs, doesn't raise prices. In fact, more cash in the hands of working people actually helps the economy. You got to take on the line. Down here in the South, it's wrong that down here in the South, far too many politicians still use cultural wars to pit white workers against workers of color. And while they're pitting folk against one another, 50% of all workers in the South make less than a living wage. Don't fall for the tricks. Don't fall for the diversions. Don't fall for the deflections. You see, in the South, Dr. King said in Alabama, he said, the greatest fear of the Southern oligarchy is that the masses of poor Negroes and poor white folk would get together and form a political voting bloc that would fundamentally change the economic architecture of the country. But for what we are seeing today, it's not Trumpism. For the past 50 years, the Southern strategy has been used to use cultural wedge issues to pit white folk against black folk and brown folk and straight folk and gay folk and immigrants. They called it positive polarization. They actually said if we get caught lying, say we didn't do it. But positive polarization. But what we've got to realize in this time now is that the same folk that are taking our voting rights are also blocking our living wages. The same folk that are denying our health care are also blocking our living wages. The same folk attacking the LGBTQ community is taking our living wages. The same folk trying to tell women what to do with their bodies are taking their wages. And we have got to decide if they are cynical enough to be together, we got to be smart enough to come together. Look around this room. The South is not really made up of red states or blue states. The South is a deliberately unorganized state, a deliberately divided state, but that's changing. That's why Senator Sanders is right to come south and make the case for living wage. 1/3 of the nation's poor live in the South. 1/3 of all poor white people live in the South. It's wrong that greedy people on Wall Street have gotten bailout while many of you have gotten locked up when you simply stood for a living wage. It's wrong. It's wrong that the law still allows tip workers to be $2.15 an hour, which is nothing but an extension of slave labor into the service industry. So whatever kind of worker you are, we say living wages now. We need moral clarity. Somebody say moral clarity. Moral clarity. We got to cut through the neoliberal deceptions and the trickle-down deception and the moderate deception. Dr. King one time said moderates were the greatest enemies to the movement because they're more interested in order than they are in justice. And we have to cut through the lie that full employment is the answer, because slavery was full employment. When you have a lot of low-wage jobs being given to people, that is a moral contradiction. Low-wage jobs and full employment when you're working but you're not being paid. The moral priorities of extremists are so off that just last night they argued to the whole world that the way to save the world's economy and the nation's economy is to kick needy people off of food stamps. What a disgrace. We got a moral crisis.
Yeah, we do.
And finally, low wages are not just wrong, they are deadly.
Yes.
Listen to me now. Did you know that 700 people were dying a day, 800 people were dying a day before COVID from poverty? Poverty during COVID, the poor died at a rate 3 to 5 times higher, whether you're in a poor white community or poor black community. Not because COVID killed, but because of all of the ways in which they did not have things or access because they were poor. Did you know that 330,000 people died during COVID, not from COVID, but from the lack of health insurance? And America is the only of the 25 wealthiest nations that doesn't offer some form of universal health care. A research team led by David Brady of the University of California, Riverside, broke the news last month. Poverty is the 4th leading cause of death in America.
Right.
It's greater than homicide. It's greater than diabetes. It's greater than respiratory disease. And it's greater than gun violence. And that's why it's so bad when preachers get up and try to justify injustice, because what they really are doing is saying so much about what God says so little and so little about what God says so much. A 7.25 poverty wage is a death wage. And when you refuse to raise the living wage, you are engaging in policy murder. People are beyond frustrated. Things have to change. No longer can we accept that before COVID, there were 140 million poor and low wealth people in this country. 43% of adults, 53% of children, 26 million black people, 66 million white people, 73 million women, 68% of Latinos, more than 40 million workers making less than $15 an hour. We need living wages now. 46% of all the people in Tennessee are poor and or low income. That's 3 million people. 56% of your children, 48% of women, 1.6 million, 61% people of color, 1.1 million, 41% of white people in Tennessee, 2 million people. So workers, don't let up. Make them hear you. Make them see you. Make them feel your power. This is not about Democrat versus Republican. This is about doing right, and the right time to do right is right now. Oh, hallelujah. This is not even about black versus white versus brown versus Asian or versus native, Because when you make a poverty wage and you can't pay your light bill, we all black in the dark. When your child can't eat, they don't cry black, they don't cry white, they don't cry Asian, they cry hunger. We cannot allow corporate greed and political sellouts to tear the soul of this nation apart. This is our moral fight. We are fighting to save the nation's soul and the nation's substance. And it should have already taken place. Senator Sanders put it on the table during the pandemic, made the case. 49 Republicans and 2 Democrats voted to block nearly 50 million people, frontline workers, from getting health care. Let me tell you who they blocked. Health care workers, protective service workers, some cops, some fire people, cashiers, grocery delivery drivers, machinists, merchandise stores, restaurant workers, educators, food processors, sanitation workers. They blocked all of them. But my brothers and sisters, there's a message in all of that. If all of us get together, it's time. And the people have got to rise and decide that things have to change. It's time for things to change, and it's time for justice to make a move. Did you know that poor and low-wealth people now make up 30% of the elected justice in this country? And in the states where the margin of victory was within 3%, poor and low-wealth people make up 43% of the elected. In fact, there's not a state in the South where if 25% of poor and low-income people who haven't voted in the past would choose to come together and say that things have to change and vote their power, that they couldn't determine every office in that state. And so, it's time to fight now. It's time for living wages now. Until families don't have to choose between rent and medicine, living wages now. Until people can know that they'll be all right, living wages now. Is there anybody with me? You better understand, America. We are going to lobby in the halls of Congress now. If we got to lay down in the streets and in the halls of Congress to get the job done, we're going to do it now. We're going to turn out in record numbers at the polls because now is the time. No more excuses. Say it.
No more excuses.
No more workers rejected.
No more workers rejected.
No more families hurt.
No more families hurt.
Living wages.
Living wages.
Now.
Now.
Now let me close by telling you who you are. Harry Belafonte died, but he left us with a song. And it ought to become one of the songs of this movie. The song says, "We are the wave." It says, "The sea will wash against the rock, and the rock stands strong." The sea will wash against the rock, and the rock stands strong. But before too long, the rock is gone. The wind will blow against the stone, and the stone will stand strong. The wind will blow against the stone, but before too long, the stone is gone. Patience, gentlemen. Patience, sisters. The stone will soon give away. You know who you are? We are the flow. We are the wind, and soon the rock must go. We are the wave. We are the wind, and soon the rock must go. We are the wave. We are the wind, and soon the stone must go. What rock? What stone? The stone of injustice, the stone of voter suppression, the stone of low wages, the stone of denial of health care. You know who you are? We are the wind. We are the wave. We have the power. Soon, if we stay together. Soon, if we organize together. Soon, if we vote together. Black and white and Latino and Asian and Native and poor and gay and straight. We are the wind. We are the wave. We are the wind. We are the wind. And soon,
Barber. Now please put your hands together for the senator from Vermont, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Thank you, Nashville. Let me thank all of you for coming out this evening. This is a wonderful turnout. We appreciate you being here. Let me thank the many thousands of people all across this country who are looking at you right now on live stream. Let me thank representatives. Let me thank our musicians, Sam Lewis and Allison Russell. Let me thank Alona Royale, Sam Lewis, Honey Hurth, Representative Justin Jones, and let me thank one of the great fighters for social justice in this country, Reverend William Barber. The reason that we are here tonight is not complicated. In the richest country in the history of the world, we demand an economy that works for all, not just the few. We demand an economy that is based on justice. And you just heard the Reverend speak about the history of the struggle for justice. That's what we want. And we want an economy that is not based on the extraordinary level of greed, uncontrollable greed that we see today. You know, in Vermont, and I'm sure in Tennessee and all over this country, we have a serious problem with addiction. We have drug addiction, alcohol addiction, tobacco addiction. We have all kinds of addiction. But maybe the most egregious addiction of all is that our ruling class is seething with greed. They cannot get enough. 5 billion in wealth is not enough. 10 billion, they don't know how to spend their money. As you know, some of them now, after they buy their islands and they buy their personal planes, they're now off to Mars and outer space. They don't know how to spend their money, while 600,000 Americans are homeless. We demand an economy that understands that health care is a human right, not a privilege. We demand a healthcare system whose goal is not to make tens of billions for drug companies and insurance companies, but to provide quality health care to every man, woman, and child in this country. We want a health care system in which every American can walk into a doctor's office whenever he or she is ill and not worry about the bill, can go to a hospital, not worry about coming out bankrupt. Now, some people may tell you it's a radical idea It exists in virtually every major country on earth. If Europe can do it, if Canada can do it, you know what? The United States of America can do it as well. We demand an economy in which all of our people can live in decent, affordable housing. Wherever I go, in my state of Vermont or all over this country, what I hear is people simply cannot afford housing. Not true here? Well, it's true in Vermont as well. And communities cannot even attract the nurses or the firemen or the cops that they need because there is no affordable housing. So maybe, just maybe, instead of spending tens of billions more on the military, how about building the affordable housing? We demand an economy that makes sure the elderly in our society can retire with dignity. Yeah. Half of older Americans have nothing in the bank as they approach retirement. And you got some geniuses out there talking about cutting Social Security. Well, we're not going to cut Social Security, we're going to expand Social Security. Understanding what Tennessee and Nashville have recently gone through, we demand a society in which we have sensible gun safety legislation. You know, I go around my state a lot. I go around the state of Vermont a lot, and I go into a lot of schools. And it is almost unspeakable. And I, frankly, it's one of the issues I don't like talking about because it is so horrific and so painful. But you go to schools and kids go through all of these exercises in terms of what will happen if there's a shooter in a school. Can you imagine all over this country? It used to be that you went to school, it was a safe place, secure place. Now kids are scared to death of unspeakable crimes. So we have got to have the courage to stand up to right-wing extremists, do what the American people want, that is sensible gun safety. And as Reverend Barber said so effectively, we are here today to state as emphatically as we can that in the year 2023, no one in America should be forced to work for starvation wages. I don't care where you are in America. I don't care if you're in the South, the North, the East, the West. You can't make it on $7.25 an hour. You can't make it on $9 an hour. You can't make it on 11 or 12 bucks an hour. We need in Congress to pass a minimum wage bill which has a livable wage. And as the chairman of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pension Committee, which has jurisdiction over this issue, with you and with the American people, we're going to do everything we can to raise that minimum wage to at least 17 bucks an hour. Now, in my view, we can no longer, and I appreciate so much Reverend Barber putting all of this into a moral context. It's not political, it's not economic, it is moral. It is not moral when the billionaires get richer and working families struggle to put food on the table. And here is the reality, and I want you all to know it because you do know it. We don't talk about it enough. We don't talk about it in Congress. We don't talk about it in the corporate media. But here is the truth, and that is for the people on top, the economy today in America has never, ever been better. They have never had it so good. But for working class people, in many instances, our people are falling further and further behind as they struggle to pay their grocery bills, their rents, their health care bills. Today in America, and we don't talk about it very much, but it's time that we do. We have more income and wealth inequality now than ever before. Now you tell me the morality, the decency of 3 people on top owning more wealth than the bottom half of American society, 165 million people. How much do they need? How many homes do they need? How many islands do they need to buy where children in America go hungry? Today, while nearly 18 million American families are paying more than 50% of their limited incomes on housing. You all know those folks, right? There you go. And nearly 600,000 Americans are homeless. The top 1% own more wealth than the bottom 90%. Today, while millions of ordinary workers are working longer hours for lower wages, the CEOs of the largest corporations now earn 400 times more than the people they employ. 400 times! And that is the largest CEO worker differential in the history of this country. When I was a kid, it was 20, 30 to 1, you know. CEOs always make more money than workers, nothing new about that. 20, 30, 50 to 1, now it is 400 times. And I want to tell you something else that is not talked about in Congress or in the media. And that is, since 1975, there has been a massive redistribution of wealth. You know, you hear our corporate friends, they're worried, oh, how terrible it is to redistribute wealth. Well, guess what? In the last 50 years, there has been a massive redistribution of wealth, but it's gone the wrong way. Over the past 50 years, more than $50 trillion in wealth has been redistributed from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. You got that? $50 trillion from the bottom to the top. Now today in America, and I'm sure I don't have to tell this to anybody here, 60% of our workers are living paycheck to paycheck. I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. Many of us today, many of you are living paycheck to paycheck. And I'll tell you what that means. Reverend Barber touched on it, because we don't talk about it enough. It means that every single day when you live paycheck to paycheck, when you are worried if you're going to be able to afford rent, when you're scared to death that if your car breaks down, you can't get to work, you're going to get fined. When you're worried if your kid gets sick, how are you going to afford a medical bill? And if God forbid somebody ends up in the hospital, how are you going to pay a $50,000 bill? People are worried and stressed out. And you know what the doctors tell us? Stress kills. Living paycheck to paycheck leaves you with no sense of security. Right? You got to hustle, you got to worry every single day. It takes a toll on your mind, it takes a toll on your body. You have no cushion to fall back on. No quality time to spend with your family where you can relax and not worry about what tomorrow is going to bring. And the result of all of this is rather incredible. We don't talk about it. It is that not only in America is life expectancy in general going down, the differential in years between working class and low-income people and the rich is growing wider. Poverty is a death sentence. Poverty is a death sentence. And we're standing here this evening to say we will no longer accept that. It is no great secret that here in Tennessee or Vermont or any place else, the American people are angry.
Now we are.
And sometimes, unfortunately, people are taking out their anger in a bad direction. Well, if you're angry out there, you have a right to be angry, but take it out on the people who are causing your family misery, not your co-workers. Don't take it out on people because their skin color is different than yours, or their sexual orientation is different than yours. Take that anger out on those greedy people on top who want it all at the expense of all working people. And one of the reasons that people are so angry has to do with the reality that the average worker in our country, I want you all to hear this, makes $50 a week less than he or she did 50 years ago after adjusting for inflation. Think about that for a moment. All of you have experienced all of the impacts of automation, of computer technology, of all of the explosions in technology that we have seen, which make each and every worker in this room more productive. And yet, after all of that increase in productivity, millions of workers are falling further and further behind. When all is said and done, real weekly wages for the average American worker today is lower than they were in 1973. Can you believe it? And that's the struggle that we have. Now, there are a lot of things that we have got to do, but at the top of the list is saying very clearly that if you are working 40 hours a week, you are not living in poverty. You've got to raise that minimum wage to $17 an hour. It is not acceptable that today, in the richest country in the history of the world, nearly 35 million American workers make less than $17 an hour. And it is a national disgrace. And as a member of Congress, I'm embarrassed to tell you, Congress has not passed an increase in the minimum wage since 2007, 16 years ago. Can you believe that? Think of what's happened in the last 16 years. Congress has not raised the minimum wage. So yes, together, we are going to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, because in this country, a job should lift you out of poverty, not keep you in it. One of the points I want to make to you this evening is that all of the ideas that I've been talking about, that Reverend Barber talked about, our opponents, oh, these are radical ideas, unheard of. These are ideas that the American people believe in, that they want. We are not the extremists. They are the extremists in denying what the American people want. In poll after poll, the American people make it clear they want the minimum wage raised here in Tennessee and Vermont, all over this country. But it is not just the polls. As a result of congressional inaction, cities and states all across this country are taking the low-wage crisis into their own hands. Congress is not acting to their credit. Cities and states are, and raising the minimum wage. In November of last year, nearly 60% of the people in Nebraska, my friends, is not considered a progressive state. 60% of the people in Nebraska, a state with a Republican governor and 2 Republican senators, voted to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We all know about Florida and their wonderful governor. In November of 2020, 61% of the people in Florida voted to raise the minimum wage in that state to $15 an hour. Today, 13 states have approved a $15 an hour minimum wage. And you know what? As a result of inflation, $15 an hour back in 2021 would be over $17 an hour today. So $17 is not a radical idea. According to MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, a living wage for working adults in Tennessee is $17.56 an hour. That is what an individual in a household must earn to support his or her family. The time is long overdue for us to raise the minimum wage, and together we will do just that. While we deal with the federal minimum wage, we must also address the scandal of the tipped wage, which has been stuck at $2.13 an hour for more than 30 years. Think it's time for a raise there? The restaurant lobby and the big money interests want to make sure that waitresses and waiters, people who work in restaurants, other service industries, earn starvation wages. We're going to stand up to them. We're going to raise that tip wage to the wage it should be. Brothers and sisters, the biggest impediment we face to change is not just the billions of dollars that big money interests put into politics in our corrupt political system. That's a real problem. It's not the biggest problem. Biggest problem is not just employers trying to break unions. That's a big problem. It's not the biggest problem. The biggest problem that we have gets back to something that Nelson Mandela said a long time ago. And he said that everything seems impossible until it happens. In other words, what the system, what the money interests, what the establishment wants you to believe is you're powerless. They got all the money, they got all the power, they own the media, they can take your job and ship it to China tomorrow. You got nothing. And what we are here to say, Reverend Barber made this point better than I did, is that when they divide us up, they win. When we stand together, black and white and Latino, Native American, Asian American, when we stand together as working people, gay and straight, At the end of the day, the 1% is very powerful. I would not deny that for a moment. I am not a mathematician, but I do know that 99% is a hell of a bigger number than 1%. I'm here this evening in Nashville because I don't believe in the concept of red state or blue state. I really don't believe it. I believe